Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 331 with myself, Sarah Monroe, and I'm going to let Sarah tell you about our guest. This week, we're going to be talking about Twitter safety mode. And I got to say, when I hear Twitter safety mode, it makes me think of there's like a safety dance. I think there was like a song or something. So I see Sarah laughing in the background. Yeah. So we're going to be talking about Twitter safety mode. We've got some other Twitter updates this week. A change from Facebook that I'm intrigued to hear what everyone's opinion is of it. And we're also going to talk with Agata as well during the broadcast as well. But this is episode 331. By the way, if you are watching live, we're over on YouTube at Social Chefs. We're also broadcasting to Twitter Spaces at Social Chefs as well. But with that, I'm going to bring on Sarah, and we're going to kick things off. Sarah, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great. You know, we thought this was going to be a slow news week when we saw the headlines coming in, but already backstage, we've had this fabulous conversation with our guest. And I have watched some of her recent trainings that she's posted on YouTube about video production and Instagram Reels. She was here a couple months ago. She promised that she would come back to share her knowledge about video. And it's Agata Pawlak, who is the co-founder of Cruise Creative and the Agile Marketing Network. And she is a content creator. She is a social media manager. She is in the trenches dealing with the algorithms every single day. So Agata, welcome back to Social Chatter.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me again. Very happy to be here.
Anytime. This is gonna be a good episode, I think. So,
Absolutely.
I guess, you know what? How about this? Why don't you give everybody your 30-second pitch? Like, who are you?
Oh my God, put me on the spot there. Well, someone once called me content creator. What was it? Was it you, Sarah? Extraordinaire or something.
Yes.
So basically, yes, I love that. Well, actually, I'm social media manager. I'm content creator most. So I love creating content. I love creating video content. I would call myself probably video content algorithm specialist. So I do all the things, in the front of camera, back of camera, live video production, you name it. So as you said, they're in the trenches with algorithms every single day.
Very cool. So,
Great.
and again, and that's why we have people on the show that are in the trenches that talk about social media, because here's the thing. It's one thing to say that you do it, but you actually have to do it to be able to do that, to be able to talk about that. And so, so it's great having you back. What is the third episode, I think, but thanks a lot for joining us again. Yeah. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're going to kick things off. Again, this is a 45 to 60 minute show. We got a lot to cover. So Sarah, over to you.
We do have a lot to cover. So the first piece of news is coming from Twitter, and that is safety mode, Twitter safety mode. We had talked about this back in September when Twitter was first announcing it and saying that this was something that they were going to start testing. They now have the next iteration of their testing. It's coming out to English-speaking markets. And it's going to make sense when we explain what this means, why it's only English-speaking markets right now, because what it's going to do is use the Twitter machine learning and the AI to recognize online abuse and harassment. So if you are a Twitter user, you will see that in an English-speaking country, so right now, US, England, Australia and New Zealand, you'll be able to see safety mode come on, and you can turn that on. And what that will do is allow Twitter to block potentially harmful language. Now, this is part of just a bigger movement online and on social media to reduce the prevalence and visibility of harmful remarks and hate speech, especially when it comes to online harassment. So they are going to, what this will do when it's activated is that it will hide comments It'll hide your account from search. It will limit who can reply. Or I'm sorry, these were different tools that Twitter has had to allow you to hide comments, hide from search, limit who can reply to your account. But now with Twitter safety mode, it will consider the context between the user, the author of the tweet, and the replier of the tweet, and the frequency of interactions that we have. So if someone starts to repetitively reply or mention using harmful language, they will be blocked from being able to comment or tag your account for up to 7 days. And the other thing is that blocked user won't be able to see the author's tweets, won't be able to follow them, won't be able to direct message them. So this is a different way of blocking people. It's automated. It's not something that you have to go in and physically do to block those other users that might be harassing you online. But it's another step to add this automation, use Twitter's machine learning to make Twitter a safer and more productive place, right? So this is really being informed by Twitter's Trust and Safety Council. They're advising the process. They advise the feedback that they got from the first trial over the fall, will be very involved with what the feedback is on this next iteration of safety mode. And really, it's also part of Twitter's focused approach to online gender-based violence that has been increasing. And I know we talked, Agata and I talked before the show too about what's it like in the EU where she's based versus other countries. So this is really part of a framework set forth by the World Wide Web Foundation, and Twitter is really focusing on it this year. And what's great is that it's a long time coming, and it's definitely needed in the countries where we are facing a lot more harassment online. So let's bring in Agata, because I'd love to hear let's talk about your experience with how this plays out where you are. I know you're based in Spain, but you grew up in Poland, right?
Yes.
Am I getting your background right? Yeah.
That's right.
So, and Christian and I are based in North America. So let's see, what do you think of it?
Well, to be honest, first time when I heard about it, I was a little bit conflicted because, as you said, my background is a little bit different. And first of all, Twitter is not huge in Europe, apart from UK. If we count, UK is Europe, not part of European Union anymore, but part of Europe as a continent. It's big in UK, and I don't really know that much about Twitter in UK. But in general, I would say that I think in Europe, and of course, everybody's experience is a little bit different. We don't face as much harassment as people in US, because we just spoke before. You told me a few examples, and I couldn't believe this because I think that it doesn't really happen in Europe so much. So I think that if Twitter or any other platform is going to go down that route of creating a safe mode, it has to be done correctly. Because what I am afraid is, AI is still developing. And if it works correctly, beautiful. I'm all for it. Let's block this horrible language. Let's block, death threats or this gender hate, any hate that is of course, done. But hopefully it's not going to be done to the point where disagreeing with someone is not possible anymore. And we cross that boundary to a censorship, because that I am not necessarily for. So I am for doing it, but doing it correctly. And I hope that's what's going to happen, because of course, censorship is increasing as well across the world, and it's very very difficult to find that boundary. But I definitely agree with the harassment, and I have my own YouTube channel, which is a bit steady at the minute, and of course, as a woman, I got comments that were ridiculous, and just because I'm a woman, I was straight away sexualized, even though I wasn't talking about anything remotely connected, and it doesn't feel great. So of course, stuff like that are great. However, another thing pops up. If anybody ever had been harassed or have had comments on Instagram, let's say, as well, that were of that hateful nature, what happens is when you block that user, someone opens another account and another account and another account and another account. Of course, now the platforms are a little bit more smart, and they are able to block users that are on the same IP address. So you can, on Instagram, you can block a person and every future account that they might open, which is awesome. And I hope that this will be as smart as well on Twitter. I think that long-term solution overall for internet should be having people attached to their true identities, so their words actually mean something. So if you repetitively harass a lot of people, you are accountable for it. You cannot just say things under, funny cat nickname, or whatever you will decide to use. But it's a step in the right direction for sure.
Right. Well, what's interesting about this safety mode, I stumbled a little bit in explaining it, is that it is going to consider the frame of language. And it's been years that Twitter and Instagram, I think, I haven't seen the pop-ups lately, but about 4 or 5 years ago, Twitter and Instagram also had these little prompts that if you wrote something in a negative frame, that you would get the pop-up that asks, are you sure you want to post that? Right. So I haven't seen them lately, but I think it's using some of that AI that they had. It's also going to have the interaction between the author and the replier. So if it's a new account, like you said, those people who just create new accounts, or the bot farms that are just, firing a new account at people, that it'll take into consideration that if the author has replied to the replier and has there been a relationship built there. It's going to be hard with the language too, because there are some communities that I'm thinking, especially of the LGBTQ community, that use phrases. They've owned some phrases among themselves that they use, but it's also used in a harassing way by people who aren't in the LGBTQ community. So how Twitter is going to manage that, but that signal of that relationship, I think, is going to help out a lot. And like you said, being a woman online is tough. If I post a picture, my personal Instagram account is mostly just the things that I think are visually interesting and a thought in my head related to the image or something like that. But when I post a picture of my face on Instagram, I immediately get comments or DMs. And I'm not a big presence on Instagram, right? And that just makes it not a great place to be, right? And I know women in the gaming industry, I know women in some of the arts that have always concealed their gender online so that they don't get this. They don't get this harassment. So
this is truly bizarre for me, because of course I appear on Instagram not as often as I used to with my face, but even though I said I used to get comments, because my YouTube was mostly for American audience, weirdly, but Instagram, etc., it's kind of mixed Europeans and Americans, and I think it's very interesting to see how also these different nations have different struggles, let's say, because maybe I'm not aware of it, because I know definitely that in UK, there was a big thing a few years ago when a celebrity was harassed to the point that she committed suicide. And that opened a big debate in UK about hate online, of course, because she faced hate for some ridiculous reason. I cannot even remember now, or some accusation that was turned out to be untrue, but it was too late, So of course, stuff like that are very important, but we have to remember how important it is to be made right, because we don't want to come to the point where someone else has a different political view and we say, oh, I disagree with you on that, or I don't like that, or I think that this and this person is saying something wrong, and then everybody's being blocked. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be, we can't squelch the productive dialogue that we can have online. Yeah, for sure. Christian, want to weigh in?
I would say this. I mean, I like the idea that this is hopefully going to, I do agree with Agata in the sense that this is something that like people should have to be their true self online. I know we're not ever going to really get away from that. But I think like there's going to have to be something where you're going to have more people moving towards people should be able to be online and feel safe. I think that's my key point. And and I think and I was I've been listening to some books and things like that, and a lot of them talk about hey, there's incidents that happen to some people, and that will hold them back for ever. And so I think having a safety mode, the fact that it does also kind of sort of help shield you a little bit, I think that is going to be useful. So I also checked, by the way, I don't have this yet in the Twitter mobile app, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. By the way, we did have a good question from James. He says, do you think we might move towards some form of internet license where you need to prove personal identity?
Maybe I am old school, but I hope so. I mean, I think that, especially now, the generations that have been, all of us were raised, probably were little kids when we did not have internet.
Yeah.
So we were taught a little bit different. All of our words had meaning because they were said face to face. So maybe we use internet a little bit different. But if someone has been raised in this era of anonymity, when they can say whatever they want for fun to provoke a reaction, I think that accountability would be good, and the license, or I don't know, however you call it. But, every time, I don't know, you open a crypto wallet or you open a bank account, you have to show your ID in any financial institutions. Why not do it for social media? Why not every account that you have to open, you have to scan your ID? So in case you are harmful online, the police can find you, easy.
Good points. Okay.
I have a different opinion. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I would disagree. I would say that there are instances where people do need to hide their identity a little bit. And are we excluding them from the social networks because for whatever reason, either they have issues with stalkers? I know some Black women where I live that are stalked physically and stalked online. They can't post anything without just the hate piling onto them, and are physically at risk wherever they go. So there's that. There's also the minor thing. If you want to if you are 14 years old and just getting onto the internet, that you may want to hide your identity a little bit, or you may have a background of abuse, or you may be transitioning from one gender to another, and so your real ID doesn't match your current gender identity. And so how do we make social media or just online communities safe for everybody, right?
Well, how about middle way? How about you still can hide under your specific nickname, but if you're being flagged for harassment, the police can access your true identity. In this way, your true identity is not visible online, but if something happens and you're being flagged, then authorities can find you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. That really is. And it would eliminate all of these bot farms, right? The people who are trying to spread misinformation, who are just creating new accounts just to be bad actors online.
Yeah.
So really interesting. Really interesting. So.
I'm all for it.
So anything else to add, Christian?
No, nothing else to add here. So
okay. Well, why don't we jump to the next news topic, because it has a little bit to do with what I'm talking about with those bots, right? And that is Twitter announced this last night. They held a Twitter Spaces. I was trying to listen to it as I was getting ready for today's show. So what they are going to do, this is Twitter's idea of, they're calling them good bots, right? It's basically the automated accounts that are on Twitter. For example, if people aren't familiar with this, there's one example. I think the Twitter bot lit up this morning for us here. I live in Vermont. There's a Twitter bot that uses open source. It tweets out open source data on floodwater watches. So right now we have a snowmelt going on. We have ice dams and rivers. There's a high risk of flooding right now. So there is a Twitter bot that was created by someone in our public radio reporting team. And so it's tweeting out any floodwater rises. So that's just one thing. There's a lot of weather apps. There's a lot of accounts that use formulas, the IFTT, the if this then that formulas to have these automated accounts. So there isn't any audit. Twitter isn't auditing any of this system yet. My question is, will that change? Will they have like preferred bots or verified automated accounts? There's no verification right now for spam or information that's coming from the quote unquote good bot announcement that they're launching. But it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. So where that bot will show up, it'll show up in the profile, but you'll also see it in your timeline. So when you see a tweet that comes from an automated account, it'll say it within that tweet in your feed so that you can see it.
Very nice. And by the way, for those of you who are looking at the screenshot, there's a automated buy option. It's right underneath the username. Yeah. So just kind of keep that in mind. But basically, it's good to see that it is automated. I guess my question on this one, Sarah, and I don't know, we're going to bring back for discussion, or did you want to cover?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can do a quick discussion on it.
I think that like it's great that they're showing this as automated, but I also think that, I mean, I don't know about you. Do you actually like go through your notifications, or do you really read through the accounts? It's extra time that people are going to have to put into, the accounts they're kind of decide to follow.
Well, it'll appear in your feed.
Yeah.
It'll appear with a tweet too, so that you don't necessarily have to jump to see where that profile is coming from or what that profile is.
Agata, what do you think?
No, I think it's a great idea, especially for the stuff like you said, Sarah, about the floods, etc. I'm guessing you just follow it as any other account, right? It's just going to be automated. So I don't see why not. I think it's a good thing. But then again, I think that they probably should be verified, because someone will find some creative way to create bots that are just going to be, flooding the our feeds, etc.
There are times where I wish I lived where you lived, because we just get flooded with misinformation in North America. It's just the amount of bad stuff.
I mean, misinformation is big.
Misinformation is just huge. And what's nice is that this is happening before the US elections. I know that, we're just one country in a big planet, but it seems like all the bad stuff happens to land in our hemisphere. So so hopefully it will battle what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, with misinformation, I think it's everywhere, and it's like it's getting really hard to know which information is right and which is wrong and which is manipulation and which is what. So I think in that terms we are not immune to it either, unfortunately. But I guess we use less Twitter, so we just get less of it. I mean, we still get it more probably in Facebook feeds, but that's another conversation. If Facebook and Instagram are still going to be in Europe, because there have been some scare, but maybe for another time.
Right. Another longer conversation. Right. So anything else, Christian?
Nothing else to add here. Nope.
Okay, great. So why don't we zip through the rest of the news so that we have plenty of time, because I have so many questions for Agata about video production. Okay,
let's do it.
So lightning round. Let's zip through Twitter. Sticking with Twitter, there are some more Twitter sleuths that are finding some more details about Twitter communities and how that will be updated. So this is coming from some different accounts of people who are really looking into the reverse engineering in Twitter. So they're seeing that we had talked about Twitter communities a few weeks ago. They are seeing that Twitter communities will have the invitation option that the moderators can control. They can issue invitations. It sounds like, again, very speculative, it sounds like users within that Twitter community may be able to invite others, and it's auto approved for them coming in. So we'll see more of this with Twitter having these open, restricted, and invitation only communities where you can just sort of have your own little section of Twitter for Twitter users. Facebook announced that they are changing the name of the news feed. Remember when we used to say, "Oh, it's your Facebook wall," right? So, and then it was news feed. Now it's just going to be feed. And And those of us who've been using Facebook a long time were sort of saying, well, big whoop, right? what's the deal with this? But really, it is confusing for the emerging markets that are just coming into using Facebook. If you can believe that, there are parts of the world that don't use Facebook much. And I guess the quote unquote news feed vernacular was getting confused, especially when you think if you're a new user and you haven't seen the evolution of the icons, right? You have the little news icon, you have the shopping icon and all of that. And then you have something called the news feed. And well, does that include posts from your friends and family, or is it only news sources? So this is just trying to clarify the terms within the Facebook ecosystem especially for new users. No changes to algorithm. They made that very clear. They're not changing anything else. It's just a name change. The other piece that's come out from, again, those internet sleuths is that WhatsApp is developing that community aspect. This is very, very early on. I think we can't even say that it's beta because I think it's pre-beta the way that I've seen the screenshots about this. But it looks like there's going to be some new controls with WhatsApp communities. Another piece in talking about misinformation and political discussion online, LinkedIn is going to offer the option to turn off political posts. So this is going to be, right now, some US users have this. There's no real clarification about what is going to be considered a political post. They're saying keywords and signals from users. Who knows what that means? Right? It may move to being a little more topic specific, but it'll be really interesting to see what is deemed political. LinkedIn has really been more apolitical. People aren't posting very election related political campaign kind of information on LinkedIn for the most part, I want to say. But from a standpoint of someone who works with people in advocacy work, I'm a little concerned about what this might mean for different advocacy and awareness campaigns. So for instance, I work with some people in the pay equity sphere, and would pay equity, closing the gender wage gap, be considered political? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this whole political post. And finally, Snapchat is testing ads in their mid-rolls, so some creators will be able to add ads in between their stories. So it's just another expansion of Snapchat's creator monetization efforts. And so that's all the news. Phew.
There's certainly a lot of it. I got to say that. I mean, if I had to kind of pick up these topics, I just kind of give some quick thoughts on things. So I would say, when I'm talking about, like, for Facebook, so for example, Facebook's renaming the news feed to just feed. I wonder if that's because they're realizing that it's not just, maybe it's not just about realizing it, but it's not just news, it's updates from people. And so it's like, going to an RSS feed in like, where you read blog articles or things like that, right? Like, I'm reading a feed of the things I want to see. So it's not necessarily news. It could be news, it could be information, it could be tweets, it could be all sorts of stuff. So I don't see much change there. The WhatsApp community piece, I think, to me, is pretty interesting. Even though there's not a whole lot there to kind of work with at the moment. People are already using WhatsApp, and they're using groups and things like that in a lot of locations. So I just feel like this is trying to put a little structure in place for WhatsApp that it may not necessarily need it. So it'll be interesting to see if that pushes people to like Signal or Telegram or any of those kinds of apps that are basically doing the same thing, but not under, it's owned by Meta in this case. And then lastly, that the Snapchat stories, they're Snap Star stories. So they're actually geared towards your bigger creators. So I'm glad they're rolling out more ads, but I think at some point we got to come up with some different ways to, like, instead of just running ads all the time. I think ads are great, but I think, a lot of times, like, a lot of people get sort of desensitized to them. So it's like, oh, there's more ads. And then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to go find something else that doesn't offer those ads. So that, because again, you shouldn't have to set up all these roadblocks to get in front of to be able to consume content from someone you want to consume content from.
Mhm.
So, Agata, what do you think? Anything that really sticks out to you in these topics?
I think actually WhatsApp, funny enough, because WhatsApp is huge in Spain.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, when I lived in Sweden, like nobody cared about WhatsApp. Everybody was about Snapchat. But here, WhatsApp is the main form of communication. And actually, funny enough, on my little island, we have that group called Tenerife Remote Workers and Digital Nomads.
Okay.
And the thing is that the groups can only have 500 members. So there's the group is
Yeah.
growing. We have thousands of people. It's like our European Bali here. So a lot of digital workers are coming to work
Mhm.
here. And that is a limitation, because constantly it's like, oh, who has an invite link? Oh, someone has to go off so you can go on, And
Yeah.
obviously, we have separate group now on Telegram, but a lot of people don't use Telegram yet.
Right.
So I think that for markets like ours, that's a smart move from WhatsApp, because maybe they noticed that there are some countries that are using WhatsApp, or even if they would be using Telegram, of course, to bring them back to WhatsApp. To create those communities. So I think that might be something that will change in my area of the world.
Very cool. Yeah. And so this is all real good news, by the way, from this week. I gotta say, I've been pretty impressed with this. So, Sarah, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Actually,
Sure.
we're gonna
move.
do some Q&A. I think. Right?
Exactly. Some Q&A. Well, we had promised when we talked a few months ago, Agata had promised that she would come back and share some of her knowledge about, or all of her knowledge. We'll see how far we can get, right?
Oh my God.
About producing videos. And I think at the time we were talking about Instagram Reels and all kinds of other things. So let's take a step back though. And I'm someone who's watched your videos on producing videos. So this is where I kind of mine these questions. So let's take a step back about, away from the algorithms, away from the tools, and really talk a little bit about how a business can find a style and plan for videos, because you are a content creator, not just for yourself and your companies, but for other brands. So how does a business find their style when there's so many options out there?
Well, first of all, if we're talking about general video, it's going to be talking a little bit different than for any particular platform, right? Because every niche is a little bit different. And it's very important to know your niche. And if you have a business and you are actually standing in front of the decision what type of platforms to choose for your video content, this is a huge decision, because not every platform is going to be right for you. So, for example, YouTube is a search engine, right? If not a lot of people are searching your stuff, you might not be super, successful on YouTube, even though you might have a great content. Maybe the other platform that is going to be more suitable for you, like LinkedIn, is going to give you more success if you're, for example, very business-orientated person. So the first thing that you have to think about is actually your niche. So do you even have a chance to rank and to be visible in your niche, and how to do it to be visible? So that is the first thing to think about. Obviously, you have your own business, so it's just one topic that you're going to be talking about, but I wanted to briefly touch on that because it's super important for your success. And then I like to first of all, do competitors analysis. See what people, what other successful people in your industry are doing. And that will also give you some ideas of how you want to be perceived and how you want to create content. For example, if you are someone who has a very visual product, like, for example, you're doing crafts, then you might want to, make sure that the type of video, to the point of your camera angles, your audio, your overlays, your everything is very visually pleasing, because people who are going to be watching you have to be able to see the process, right? Like, for example, we were doing some research on Twitch about crafting, and there was a guy who was doing like Japanese wood carving live on Twitch. He was huge. But of course, what people liked is the process of carving wood. So he had to make sure that the sound of carving wood was there as well, because wood is a very particular material, but also that the visuals were very close by, right? Because, people who watch you are searching for that visual, right, stimulus, because it's crafts. But if you, for example, are a different person and you are teaching people something online, you have to find the way to be creative with it as well. And a lot of things are changing in this business. You for sure saw that a lot of people now, even who are teaching business or Instagram or this or that, create more of a relaxed videos, and they actually catch more attention. That, for example, if I would start a recording video right now and started talking to you about creating videos and stuff like that. A lot of people do it outside. A lot of people do it in the sunshine. They walk, they talk, etc. And I think this is the part of the trend of, authenticity and the buzzword of authenticity that has been going on for quite a few years now, that people just like seeing people in real environments. Send me on the green screen. And that is going to be growing. So try to make sure that you provide information that you want to provide in the most human, interesting way that is the most conversational and includes as much storytelling as possible. People love hearing stories. People don't like necessarily being talked at. They like being talked to. And so the way you frame your video is also super important. So make sure that your video is as human as possible, includes the right visuals or the right audio, and everything else will fall to place. And then within those frames, you can become more creative. Whether you just decide to just show crafts in your hands and not show your face, you can do that. Whether you, decide to focus on the sound and put completely different visuals, you can do that. Then you can be creative within those stuff. But I think that the way the storytelling and humanizing, and also really thinking about, if you were your audience, what do you want to see or hear? Or if you're the person in this business, who do you want to look at, right? If you have advice from a millionaire about investing, you might want to have them sit in a nice mansion in front of, computer showing you the stats or how to invest. Really think about your audience. Put your audience first, because they are the hero. You're just their guide. That is also super important.
I like that. You're the hero and the guide. Yeah. It reminds me of Adam Mosseri, who has completely changed the Instagram announcement aspect. It's him sitting in his home office, just talking to his phone to make a reel and announce the Instagram news. It's nice that they're using their own platform instead of Twitter, but he wants to make Instagram more human, and doing that is him in his crunched up shirt, sitting in his home office and just turning on the camera every Monday or Tuesday and sharing the news.
And I think it's so much more engaging too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We are also used to seeing people online nowadays. After 2020, we're used to seeing people in all sorts of backgrounds, with kids running around, even news anchors, all of this kind of stuff happening. So we are used to it. But if I can actually emphasize that thing, because that is actually from a book that I read recently about the branding, and kill me, I don't remember the title, but to always remember that if you're making a video, that your audience is the hero. So they are the ones that need the solution, because a lot of people start making videos from the point of, I have knowledge, I'm going to put it on you and I'm the star. No, You're not the star. Star is your audience. You are
star is your audience. I like that. And story first. I think was your other take home. Story is first, right?
Yeah. And I want to add real quick, I like the fact that, you mentioned a lot. So a lot of people, like, I wouldn't say they do videos wrong, but you have to think of the context of what you're presenting, and crafting is a great example. Like, I've interviewed quite a few crafters and makers, and you can't just you can't just be like, hey, I'm going to talk about this topic. You need to have some camera presence. But for the most part, what people come to see is they come to see you actually making something. And you have to keep that in mind, depending on what style and type of video you're going to make. So if I'm going to be the crafter, I want to, people aren't there to see me. They're there to see the wood. They're there to see whatever it is that I'm making. And they want to see that process. They may want to hear some of that noise. They may not want to hear it as much, depending on how loud it is, but that helps keep your viewers engaged and watching your video. And I also would say this, I mean, I liked the other point you made about just overall about, getting more creative over time. Everybody starts somewhere. Some people start and they've got everything and they're ready to go at the beginning. And other times people are brand new to it and they have to, like, the first few videos are them talking too much. And then they start to figure out, well, hey, I need to move to more of the focus of, like, I got to change my camera setup, things like that. So that's excellent point. Okay. So Sarah, we had a second question for her, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, we've got our plan. We know we have a story to tell. We know the audience, we're going to tell it. So I think one thing that really stops everybody is the editing process, right? And it can be extremely complex. And I'm referring to that recent video that you put out because it's awesome about Instagram Reels, right? So what are some best practices for editing? And I mean, just editing in general, and maybe if you can at the end throw in a few secrets about Reels, because it sounds like Instagram is really rewarding people for using the Reels tools.
Yeah. I mean, if it goes to video editing overall, you can find something super easy and you can find something super complex. I use Premiere Pro, and I know when people hear Adobe, they're getting a heart attack because they're like, oh my God. And I'm going to be honest with Photoshop, I'm not the greatest, but there are a lot of alternatives that you can start with, and editing doesn't have to be that overwhelming. I would say start simple and learn later. You can learn everything online. You can put on YouTube the amount of times that I put how to do this specific thing in Premiere Pro. It's unbelievable. But start maybe with something simple. I like Filmora. I think Christian like Camtasia. I don't like how it looks. I think I'm a very aesthetic kind of person, but I know it's simple to use. Filmora is good. It's quite simple and it's not overwhelmingly expensive either. So try to do videos that don't require for you to do too much editing. So, maybe you're going to learn later how to put some overlays on. Maybe first focus on cutting out your mistakes, cutting out, maybe put few camera angles if you can, just stitching the videos together. And to be honest, now, especially back in the day, the fancy transitions were in fashion, right? Now, the jump cuts are what most of creators are doing. So jump cuts are easy to do because you just cut and you don't need to add any fancy transition to most of the videos, of course, unless you're doing cinematic vlogging. And then, of course, you're going to need to learn a little bit more. Yeah, don't overdo it. I mean, people don't like seeing graphics too much. I mean, if you want to do a small overlay, that's great. If you want to, direct people to any specific place, give them more information, tell them where they want to make information, great. You can do small overlay, but generally make sure that mostly what is visible on the screen is a person rather than, or I don't know, that's what we said before, the craft that you are doing, rather than putting overly too much graphics on. It used to be, I think that when the YouTube was starting, for example, people used to do, like slides mostly, and they were talking over them. Nobody's going to watch that in 2022. Absolutely no one. If there is just that, even if you're trying to present something on the computer, I don't know, maybe you are a graphic designer talking about stuff like that, and you want to show how the program is working, try to figure out how to also make sure that you are visible on camera. You can record in StreamYard, for example, and just share your screen and have a little thing of yourself in the corner there, so you won't have to do the overlays, etc. Get creative and try to find information. You can find information about everything, and again, start simple, and you might make it more complicated in the future. Maybe you want to do like slow, fast, slow. Maybe you want to do a masking. Maybe you want to do fancy transitions. Maybe you're going to need stuff like that, but it doesn't have to be that overwhelming at the beginning. Now, I wanted to touch also on the editing on Instagram and Instagram Reels and TikTok in a way as well, because them two, they're always the kind of like chasing each other. The good thing about editing in those apps, especially of course for the portrait types of videos, is that it is quite intuitive. And if you have, for example, been doing stories before, you're going to know how to add stickers, how to add text, etc. And they are getting more and more creative in a way that you can, of course, have a text just appearing on the part of your video. You sometimes, I mean, on the stories rather than on Reels, you can add stickers with the link, which is great because you can do a teaser of your longer form video, which you can link directly, so it's actually clickable. So that's great. I wish TikTok had that too on their TikToks, or Instagram on their Reels themselves. That would be awesome. But it gives you kind of, for portrait videos, it gives you easier user friendly kind of app to be able to edit videos and do quick cuts, etc. Of course, the limitation is that the finger is quite big, and if you want to do something very particular, it might be difficult sometimes. So it might not be, as precise as you would like it to be, but it's also a good starting point. And platforms are actually developing those editing tools more and more, and adding more cool options. We talked about in the previous episode about, the voiceovers, etc., or not even have to use your own voice, but using automated, type to voice kind of thing. So definitely also something to consider if you're thinking about doing like a portrait video.
Right. I have to say, I'll raise my hand. I'm a Filmora user too. And cool. I really like, it's a nice transition between using your phone or using iMovie and using Premiere Pro. It's right in the middle.
Yeah.
And I find it really useful, leading into the second question that we have about repurposing content, things like Adobe Pro and Filmora, and there's plenty of others. We have all of them out there. When you can clip it up, it's a little easier to repurpose. So what are your thoughts about repurposing video, especially this vertical video where you could use it on multiple platforms? Should you, and how can you?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's huge. And I think that, if you ever watch Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, he always talks about repurposing content because it's gold. You already have a piece of content that has been made, and now from this one piece you can do 15, 20, I don't know, he said 60 ones. So of course it's great, especially that some platforms more than others are adapted to specific length of video. So say again, of course, Instagram Reels, the shorter the better. And you can use it kind of as a teaser to your longer form video. LinkedIn is something in the middle. LinkedIn doesn't even allow you to upload longer than 10 minutes unless something changed recently. But from what I remember, it was not longer than 10 minutes, of course, unless it's live video. So that's a little bit different. So certain platforms have certain limitations. And, for example, Facebook as a best practice is showing you that your video should be 2-3 minutes. So you have Facebook 2-3 minutes, you have LinkedIn 10 minutes, you have Instagram Reels that is 10-15 seconds up to a minute, but better for it to be shorter. TikTok again, 260 seconds, but they're also releasing this 2-3 minute one thing. So you have different platforms, and if you are going to put the same video on all of them, it's not going to perform equally well. So definitely use it. Direct people to your full-time content, full length content if you want to. And you see a lot of big creators doing that, right? I mean, some interviews, some podcasters are actually using it very often to do the clips of their videos of their podcasts. So that's awesome, and you should definitely do that.
I think Instagram video is now, live video, you can go up to 4 hours or something like that, but that's not the production that we're talking about. I think it's up to an hour now. So
okay, yeah.
So if I could just kind of quickly restate, so best practice for repurposing those videos. Shorter videos are better, obviously, for these kinds of, TikTok, IG Reels. Just know kind of what the platform limitations are, and then use those videos to drive back to that longer form video.
Yeah, exactly. Because you still can upload the video to Instagram that is up to 60 minutes. Well, so it depends on how big account you are, but it will not perform at all.
So one last question that I have on that, I guess, is a lot of times people make there's so many choices between, so TikTok, IG Reels, YouTube Shorts, etc. You can spend all this time just making little short videos for these platforms. Is that something people should do, or should they focus on the one platform where they want to grow? So for example, if I don't have a TikTok presence, should I, have a TikTok presence just for doing this, or should I kind of just not really mess with that one?
I mean, it all depends. It depends on your capacity. I always say that you have to ask yourself a question: what is really possible for you?
Okay.
It's better to do less platforms well than to do all platforms bad. But if you have a capacity to do more, then for sure do it. Especially that, for example, with the same type of content on Reels versus TikTok, it's been a little bit, up and down. So there was a time when Reels were new, of course, when you can get crazy amounts of views, and already more than on TikTok, because TikTok was exclusively this type of content, right? So it was already harder to get visible. Now we have a lot of people on Reels as well. So it's kind of getting evened out as well. But
Okay.
I mean, if you already have a reel and it's not a big problem for you to upload it to TikTok, definitely do that. YouTube Shorts is a bit different, and it's a separate story for what types of channels should you actually, mess up with your long content with YouTube Shorts. Depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But maybe that's a different story altogether.
I think YouTube is really trying to figure that out, right? Because more creators are using Shorts on YouTube, which means that our subscription feeds are getting cluttered with Shorts. I do like Shorts. I mean, it's just, they just need to sort out what it's going to be, how long and form content can live together on one platform, which is where the sweet spot is for YouTube and Instagram, right? Is that they have those two options, whereas the others don't. So
yeah, exactly. And I think, Instagram have been smart as well to, take without changing the whole platform, just taking the best performing, features and just putting them on Instagram, and so far it's been working great. But yeah, with YouTube and YouTube Shorts, there's this whole, because as you said, they're still being redone. At the very beginning, that the problem is that it could have hurt the algorithm of the channel, because it was showing that all of a sudden you have a view duration of 15 seconds. So your view duration dropped from 10 minutes on your long videos, and all of a sudden you have 15-second view duration. And of course, YouTube had to fix it, and now it shows the percentage of the viewed content. And there's more and more stuff like this that is going to be improved, I think, because, for example, from my experience, for some channels, even though the content is great both in short form and in long form, the short one doesn't perform as good as the long one. It might be because of the different audience, and it might be just because of the algorithm as well. So
and especially if you follow Peter McKinnon had a video recently where he interviewed a bunch of different YouTubers about Shorts, and especially YouTubers that have longer form content. Their audiences are trained, like you said much earlier, right? Your audience will get accustomed to what you create, and if you've always been a long form video content creator, the short may be difficult, and your audience may not like it. Yet on the other hand, we're seeing a lot of TikTokers come in to YouTube because their audiences want to see longer content from them. So
and at the same time, there is a lot of creators that are separating it to two channels: one channel for shorts, one channel for long form.
And that's a really interesting strategy, actually. There, to be able to do something like that, because having two channels allows you to, again, also, you can always play back and forth off one another, and they're also like, some things, like, for example, it could be a recipe. Like, say you're going to go show somebody how to do something. There's a lot of YouTube Shorts that I follow that do this, and they could easily go into like a recipe and say, hey, you know what? Here are 5 ways to use this, here's some other ways to make a similar recipe or something like that. Like, so you can easily kind of play the two against one another.
Exactly.
May have them work together. So,
But getting back to what you said earlier, Agata, is the story leads the way and the audience is the hero and the star, right?
Yes.
So always keeping that in mind. If the story is shorter, the story is shorter, as long as it's what the audience wants.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And straight to it. Also, another advice, especially for people who do long form videos. You know how new YouTubers sit down and they're like, "Oh, sorry guys, I wasn't here for 7 months because I did this and did that and that." And it's 5 minutes before they start to talk about the topic of the video. That is the worst thing you can do. It's something like, some people teach to do the hook. I think everybody knows that already. That you have to capture the attention of the audience in a long video, 10-15 seconds, in a reel in a real 1-2 seconds. That's all you have.
Right.
So that first seconds of your video are super important, especially that apparently YouTube's algorithm is like listening if you're using the same keywords that you have in your title. And then it's kind of like, keywords are supposed to be less important now on YouTube. So it kind of helps you rank for the specific things if you use the same words in the first 2 minutes or something.
Right.
And I would say on that, I mean, like they listen, and they listen because they do want you to use those keywords, but they also want you to use some of the outer keywords as well that are still related to it.
Yeah.
Because again, just think about it like this. Everything you put into, you're writing a script. Everything you put into a video, the title, for example, the way you name the video, the description, like you don't want you don't want to take the title and just like, regurgitate throughout. It's like you want the title and then maybe you use it again, but you have some of that filler content that then says, hey, you know what? This video is actually pretty good versus, oh, well, it's just clearly keyword stuffing and not going to talk about anything. So, Sarah, do we have any other questions for Agata?
I think we've kind of run out of time, but I love how we started for simple people simple tricks and tips for people just getting started or trying to reformat or conceptualize how their videos will be, all the way down to let's look at watch time and keywords and SEO on YouTube. So I love how we spanned for the newbies and for those who really want the data. So thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Definitely.
We do want to mention, I believe Agata does use our tool of the week, which is Notion. And just wanted to give a little shout out to Notion because we've talked recently about agile marketing. We've talked about team collaboration, and Notion is a really interesting tool. It has a different format than some of the others. If you're familiar with Jira and Asana and Airtable, I dug into it a little bit, and I really like some of the updating tools where teams can actually catch up on where other people are without having to ask for them, and also has all of the great production calendars and things like that. So I'll let you two jump in because I think both of you use Notion. Is that right?
Yeah, I use it. I use it some. I know Agata, I think you might use it some as well. Like, I mean, I think the key thing is there are a lot of tools out there you can work with. You can use Notion, you can use Airtable. Some people use Asana. I think the key takeaway is a lot of these products are going to offer a free version of it. And I think you need to, like, if you're like, hey, you know what, I'm going to try this out, try it out, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, just know that there's always another tool as well, another similar tool. Don't feel like you have to like also fit into the specific mold. That's the great thing about this. A lot of these are containers. And so it's like, okay, they do a lot of stuff. You may not need all of it. Just use it for what you need it for. So Agata, anything else you want to add to that?
I would actually say that I have used quite a few of them. I use Airtable. I've used Jira for a little bit, Trello, what else? ClickUp, Asana. And what I like about Notion, because I use Notion every single day, my life is in Notion. Literally. I have a lot of stuff in Notion, including, every business operations, etc. So I like about Notion that it's moldable. It can be overwhelming for someone who is starting, but you can easily build something simple from the templates that are being provided, and you can find easy templates. But if you really get into it and kind of understand what an ecosystem you can build, where especially when you have a bigger team, everybody can communicate without communicating, like you said, Sarah, that people can go in, see where the work is from every department. They can minimize the amount of messages. For example, on Slack, we actually recently helped one of the teams do something like that, where we exclusively work on Notion. And it's kind of like, it takes a lot of anxiety of work as well, because instead of having notifications popping up on your Slack or whichever tool you're using, I love Slack, but of course sometimes it can be overwhelming. You just go in, someone assigned you some stuff that only you can do. You work through your to-do list one by one. So the anxiety of those constant notifications and interruptions being taken away, and you have order out of chaos. You have order, which is wonderful.
I love that. I find Slack to be pretty chaotic. So, and Microsoft Teams does it's not quite there yet.
I don't like it.
Well, I gotta say, very cool. This has been a great episode where we talked about Twitter safety mode, but we also did a nice deep dive with our guest, Agata, where we talked about, creating YouTube channel and just, how do you go about creating videos? And I mean, the key thing is just start, but keep in mind some of these principles and practices that she does recommend, they are going to help you get started faster than you trying to have to kind of figure things out. And I got to say, the other piece of advice, Agata, you added, and I think a lot of people really struggle with this when they say, hey, you know what? I got to learn how to do something. YouTube is your friend. Go look at YouTube. There's tons of videos out there. Look at, just do a search and find someone else who's doing something. And don't be afraid to ask people as well for help, because a lot of times, I mean, most people didn't start out on this journey, by themselves. They went and reached out to people that had already done it, help them kind of shortcut some of those things. So Agata, what's the best place for people to get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you?
Well, first of all, Instagram at cruz.creative. You can see it right here, right there.
Oh, very cool.
And also you can find me always on LinkedIn if you want to chat as well. Again, as Christian said, if you have any questions to me and I can help you with anything, don't be afraid to reach out. I love to chat with everybody and give some helpful advice. So make sure you connect.
Very cool. Sarah, how about you? How can people get in touch with you?
First, I'm going to do a little shout out for Cruz Creative's YouTube channel too, because I think that's pretty awesome. But people can find me at Sarah Monroe VT across the internet. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please drop a message and let me know that you found me on Social Chatter.
Very cool. And I'm Christian Kirsevich at Social Chefs across all the social platforms as well. This has been episode 331. You can check out the blog post recap over the weekend, socialchefs.com/SC331. We're going to be joined next week by Anita Wong at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be an early show, but we're going to have her join us as well. But with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in to episode 331 of Social Chatter. Agata, thanks a lot for joining us. Sarah, always great to see you. But with that, we'll see you all on a future episode. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.